Let's begin with the new guidelines on wages and retrenchment for employers in Singapore.
The National Wages Council updated its recommendations today after convening for a second time this year due to the challenging circumstances brought about by COVID-19.
Among the guidelines issued, employers may implement temporary wage cuts after other measures have been exhausted. Senior management should take earlier and deeper wage cuts. For low-wage workers earning a basic monthly salary of up to $1,400, employers should implement a wage freeze instead of a wage cut. Here's Council Chairman Peter Seah.
So one of the major calls is that retrenchment only when necessary. And you will see from our guidelines that a lot of details have been put in to help guide the issue of wage cuts, the issue of retrenchments. And it's really about creating a balance where beyond other cost cuts, wage cuts are necessary for not only for companies to get through the crisis, but also to minimize the retrenchments.
Here to help make sense of this is Assistant News Editor To Yong Chuan. Hey Yong Chuan, now what do you think of these updates? Will it help or hurt employers?
So the main recommendation today is that companies can cut wages temporarily to the extent that they are needed to save jobs. Of course, from the workers' perspective, any wage cut can be painful. But if you take a longer-term perspective, the National Wages Council say that companies can cut wages only to the extent of saving jobs. It's temporary. Low-wage workers will have their wages frozen rather than cut. So it can minimize some pain for workers in the short run. In the long run, if these moves are effective, the short-term pain that the workers bear in the wage cut can pay off in the long run. If the companies are able to survive this pandemic, keep the business intact, the jobs are intact, then it will benefit workers in the sense that they will be able to keep their jobs. At the same time, the council also said that companies should restore these cuts when business recovers, when the economy recovers. Now, this also means that the pain that the workers feel will be short-term. When the economy recovers, they will have their cuts restored.
Well, Yong Chuan, these are guidelines after all. Are the companies under any pressure to actually abide by these guidelines?
To answer this question, I've got to explain how the National Wages Council works. It is a national body comprising of the three-way partnership of the Ministry of Manpower, the National Trades Union Congress, and the Singapore National Employers Federation. Now, there's no law that says companies in Singapore must follow these guidelines. But the council has been around for many years. There's a very strong degree of moral suasion to make sure that the recommendations are implemented and followed. Of course, you have the unions being represented in the council, and the unions in the unionized companies will make sure that not just the details, the recommendations are implemented, but the spirit as well. For example, the spirit of senior management bearing a deeper cut, the spirit that these cuts are temporarily, it has to be restored when the economy recovers. So in that sense, even though there is no law that says companies must follow, the record has been very positive. And companies do follow in the sense that the spirit and the details are both implemented in the way the council recommended.
I guess this links to a very similar question, which is how is the council actually going to monitor whether or not companies actually implement pay cuts prudently and temporarily to actually save jobs?
I think that there are several channels. Of course, for one, the implementation will be monitored by unions in the unionized companies. The unions will make sure that when these recommendations kick in, the companies do not abuse them by using as excuse to cut costs when they do not need to. So union acts one level of check. Besides unions, of course, there's the Ministry of Manpower. Currently, the Manpower Ministry requires companies to notify the ministry when they retrench workers. When these retrenchment notices are received, of course, the ministry can scrutinize company and how was the retrenchment carried out? Were there wage cuts before? And through such monitoring by union and by the manpower ministry, we can ensure that there's no abuse by companies. Of course, members of the public who work for companies that are not unionized, there's nothing stopping them from complaining and bringing problems to the attention of MOM. And that's how it can be monitored and implemented.
Right, Yong Chuan, several measures announced today, but what else can the council do if the wage cuts are not enough to save jobs, especially if the COVID-19 pandemic drags on?
Now, the measures today are major because it is very rare for the NWC to recommend wage cuts. So if you play competitive sports, it's the equivalent of what I call a Hail Mary, right? You throw the ball and you pray. But thankfully, we are not there yet. If these wage cuts are not enough to save jobs or save enough jobs, there's still one more move left for the NWC. And in fact, NWC recommended it once before in the 1998 Asian financial crisis. I'm referring to CPF cuts. So the CPF and wage are two things that can be cut. Now this time round, the council made it clear that it is only recommending wage cuts, but not CPF cuts. Now this is a wise move because any cut to the CPF contribution rates will affect retirement savings, and it will come back and haunt the worker and the country in the long run because they won't be able to save enough for retirement. So the council said they considered, it decided not to make this move. And that is our Hail Mary, but we are not there yet. So we are not out of moves, and we still have some capacity where we can overcome this current crisis.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Yong Chuan. We've been speaking to To Yong Chuan, Assistant News Editor at the Straits Times.